Hey guys, tonight we're going to slide gently beneath the glowing curve of history and lie down right on the clay, because we're heading to ancient Korea, where even rooftops had souls. You start in the dark, of course, not just because it's night and you're in bed, but because the Korean countryside, centuries ago, was bathed in the kind of darkness only pierced by flickering firelight and the soft breath of wind through pine. There's a low crackle ahead, a kiln at work. You edge closer. The heat is surprisingly tender. The scent? Earthy, smoky, a little bit like rain on dry clay. This is not a place of noise, it's a place of patience, because the people here aren't making weapons or trinkets or oversized statues to impress rival kingdoms. They're making roof tiles. Unimpressed? That's okay. So is everyone else, until they noticed those tiles lasted 1,500 years while the kingdoms didn't. One mold at a time, one slow fire per batch, and suddenly, you've got something as close to architectural immortality as humans can manage. While emperors argued, these roof tiles just sat there, gently outlasting them. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into a village somewhere in the middle of the Three Kingdoms period. Let's say Baekje territory. It's hot. Cicadas scream. There are no clocks, only shadows. And the houses? Simple, squat, mostly thatched. But you're not here for those. You're here for something half buried in the hillside behind them. Rows and rows of drying clay tiles, laid out like sleeping fish. They're not flashy. No diamonds, no inscriptions of kings, no embedded QR codes. Just curved pieces of baked earth, shaped by calloused hands and patience. But the more you look, the more you feel the design whispering to you, quietly brilliant, deeply thoughtful, almost meditative. Here's the first historical fact you need tonight. Korea's earliest fired roof tiles date back to around the 3rd century CE. That's older than most Gothic cathedrals, older than Viking longboats, older than the first recorded appearance of tofu. Let that sink in while your pillow does. These weren't slapped together in a medieval Home Depot either. They were made with intentionality, flattened into smooth, concave, or convex shapes called giwa, then etched with subtle ridges to interlock perfectly. The result? A roof that could repel rain, snow, demons, and nosy neighbors, all in one go. And here's your quirky tidbit. Many Korean roofs were deliberately built with an upward tilt at the corners, which wasn't just aesthetic flair. The shape allegedly let good energy flow in and bad spirits slip away like awkward party guests. You know the type. But even now, historians still argue whether this upward curve was inspired by Buddhist cosmology, Chinese architectural influence, or just some really excellent vibes from the local tile guy who liked the look. You're starting to sweat just a little. It's hot by the kiln, but you're too fascinated to step back. Watching these tiles dry in neat rows, you begin to feel how much slowness mattered. These weren't rush jobs. They weren't mass-produced. Each one took days to shape, fire, and cool. If you cracked one, you'd have to start over. If you misfired the kiln, all you get was a pile of broken dreams and crumbly regret. Yet here's the kicker. Once finished and installed, these tiles could survive for literal centuries with nothing more than the occasional typhoon to shake them up. Roof repair wasn't a weekly thing. It was a generational footnote. Now imagine being one of those ancient tile makers. No fame, no gold. Just the knowledge that 1,000 years later, a sleepy person with a podcast is whispering about your work into a mic while wearing fuzzy socks. Strange legacy, but beautiful. As you lean down to touch one of the tiles, you notice something faint carved into the edge. A mark. A maker's seal? A date? A doodle of a goat wearing pants? No one's sure. Some tiles bear stylized signatures or symbols, little inside jokes or shrines to modesty. Others are blank, letting the curve of the clay speak for itself. Either way, these marks mean something. A human made this. Just one. And while we'll never know their name, we do know this. The tile outlived them, and their children, and their children's grandchildren. That's the genius of quiet craftsmanship. It doesn't scream to be seen. It waits. Even now, high up in Korean mountain temples and rural palaces, you can still find some of these early tiles in place, covered in moss, softened by snow, still locked together like old friends who don't need to talk to stay close. It makes you think, doesn't it, about how loud we are now. Notifications, alerts, urgency. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, a 1,400-year-old roof tile is just being, weathering, sheltering, existing. You probably won't survive this kind of humility. But the tile's just fine. So tonight, as the coals in the ancient kiln die down and the village settles into a cool, moon-washed hush, you stretch out on the grass beside the racks. There's the soft crackle of the cooling earth, the rustle of wind through pine, and somewhere in the distance, the sleepy hoot of an owl who definitely thinks you're weird for caring this much about roof tiles. But you do care, because in this quiet brilliance, this slow, clay-built wisdom, there's something strangely eternal. And you, in your temporary little body with your ticking watch and warm blanket, get to feel it for just a moment. Let's stay here, just a little longer. The journey's just begun. You wake again, figuratively at least, beneath the soft slate of pre-dawn. The kiln behind you is now nothing more than a warm husk, and the tiled roof of a nearby structure begins to silhouette itself against the paling sky. It doesn't glint. It doesn't shine. It absorbs the morning like a wise old monk drinking his first cup of barley tea. This roof, you realize, isn't just a hat for the building. It's a philosophy. You shuffle toward the structure. It's not a grand palace or ornate temple, just a modest ancestral home tucked near a slope. The walls are made of thick timber and mud plaster. But the roof? That's the masterpiece. Each curved tile overlaps like fish scales, running row upon row, guiding rain down smooth channels and shielding the home from Korea's famously moody climate. And the sound, have you heard it? The way raindrops tap across Giwa tiles in a summer storm, like fingertips drumming quietly on parchment, like secrets being whispered. You haven't lived until you've dozed off under that rhythm. These aren't just any tiles either. You're seeing the classic two-part combo, amgi and wagi, concave bottom tiles and convex top caps. Together, they create not only beauty, but watertightness. This interlocking system was so effective, it barely changed for centuries. Seriously, name one other thing in your life that hasn't needed an update since 500 CE. Can't, right? Here's tonight's historical fact to keep tucked under your pillow. The advanced tile roofing systems of the Three Kingdoms period, Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla, were deeply influenced by Chinese Han techniques. But they evolved into something uniquely Korean over time. The earliest adopters were temple builders who understood the symbolism of elevation, longevity, and celestial flow. After all, If you're constructing something for the Buddha, you don't want a leaky ceiling. Now here's your quirky tidbit. Some royal or noble homes intentionally incorporated loose tiles. On purpose. Why? Because it was believed that a too perfect roof invited divine jealousy. The gods, apparently, prefer a little humility. So, they'd insert one tile ever so slightly off-kilter to ward off cosmic side eyes. It's the roof equivalent of leaving one dish unwashed so your ancestors don't think you're getting cocky. But historians still argue whether these intentional imperfections were symbolic, ritualistic, or just really good marketing for sloppy workmanship. No, my lord. That crack? It's divine insurance. As you run your fingers over the tiles, cool from the night, slick with dew, you start to understand something deeper. The roof isn't just a shield from rain or snow. It's a conversation between human and nature, between impermanence and structure, between now and forever. The villagers begin to stir. Chickens complain in soft coos. Smoke curls from chimneys. A neighbor's broom scrapes across a stone threshold. But you stay where you are, standing below the edge of that roof like it's the Sistine Chapel in clay. Look closer. Those end tiles, the ones at the corners, they're called sumaksai, and they often carry decorative motifs, lotus blossoms, dragon faces, or swirling cloud patterns. You spot one now, a small spiral design with fading ridges. This isn't just flair. It's functional and spiritual. These decorations weren't just meant to impress visitors. They were meant to guide energy, to anchor the home within the unseen forces of Peng Su, Korea's version of feng shui. You raise your eyes and imagine this roof under snow. The way the weight would press evenly, sliding off in softened mounds. Or under summer sun, when the dark tiles absorb heat during the day and release it at night, warming the sleeping bodies beneath. It's strangely intimate, isn't it? To realize a roof isn't just over your head, it's working for you. Quietly, tirelessly, like your kidneys or your most introverted friend. Here's a fun little insight. Giwa roofs had a sound hierarchy. The more layered and curved the tiles, the fancier the building, and the higher the status of the people inside. So you could literally hear social class during a storm. The loud, rhythmic tapping on noble estates versus the softer thud on poorer homes. Sound is status. Who knew? You step back now, looking at the whole roof again. It's not just functional, it's sculptural. Like someone took the idea of shelter and whispered, "Make it poetry." And even now, centuries later, this roof remains. Weathered, yes, a few chipped tiles, a little sag in one corner, but still standing, still breathing with the wind. You don't need a flashy monument or a museum exhibit to understand human ingenuity. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet curve of clay, nestled into place by a hand long gone. As the sun finally lifts over the trees and touches the highest ridge tile, you swear the whole roof exhales. The dew steams, the birds scatter, and somewhere in your bones, a little warmth stirs. Not just because of the morning light, but because you've glimpsed the kind of genius that doesn't shout. The kind that doesn't trend. The kind that sits overhead for 1,000 years and never asks for applause. We should all be so lucky. By now the sun has climbed halfway up the sky, and you're walking the slope toward the edge of a centuries-old village. The path under your feet is packed dirt, smoothed by 1,000 quiet mornings just like this one. At your side, a stone wall, low, mossy, curved ever so gently, and behind it, another tile roof, but taller, grander. It belongs to a hanok, A traditional Korean house built for someone who clearly wasn't skimping on their roof budget. This one arches proudly. The eaves dip and flare like the wings of a stork mid-flight, designed not just for beauty, but for breath. That's right, Korean roofs breathe. The curve isn't random or decorative. It's called kyoma, the gentle slope of the eaves, and it's meticulously calculated based on the house's orientation, sunlight angles, seasonal winds, and the homeowner's spiritual preferences. You're basically looking at a medieval climate control system dressed as a sculpture. The height of the kyoma even changed depending on the owner's status. The higher the curve, the higher the rank. So yes, this roof is silently flexing. Fun fact, the curvature wasn't just for flare or rainflow, it helped with pungsu, or geomantic balance. The direction a roof faced could determine how lucky your year would be. Point it wrong? That cabbage harvest's gonna taste like regret. You duck your head beneath a gate and walk into the courtyard. Here, the full expanse of the roof spreads out before you. Look at those lines, so precise, so measured. They weren't made by trial and error. Craftsmen, called giwajang, spent decades mastering this technique. Their work wasn't just carpentry, it was legacy. A single roof could take weeks, sometimes months, to lay by hand. Each tile tapped gently into place like a prayer. And oh, the weight of those tiles. Individually, not so bad, but layer them, row upon row, and the total load on the timber frame could exceed several tons. That's why the beams beneath are so hefty, carved from ancient pine, their natural oils warding off rot and termites. Honestly, they don't make them like this anymore. No, really, they don't. Skilled giwajang are becoming rare, their art fading quietly like steam from a morning bowl of rice porridge. Now here's your quirky tidbit. During the Joseon dynasty, the king passed a law that tile roofs were only allowed for the upper class and official buildings. Commoners had to stick with thatch lest they get too fancy. Why? Part of it was hierarchy, but part of it was practicality. Thatched roofs were cheaper, yes, but they also caught fire easier. If every wooden house had a kiln-fired tile roof, the kingdom might have gone bankrupt one tea house at a time. Historians still argue whether this restriction was more about controlling fire hazards or preserving class distinctions. Probably both. And maybe a dash of royal pettiness. You look up again at the giwa. The colors have changed with the light. What was a deep slate earlier now leans towards smoky green, speckled with lichen. These weren't originally glazed tiles, not like in Chinese palaces. Korean roofs favored simplicity, earth tones, unpretentious elegance. But as royal architecture evolved, so did the tiles. You'd get bluish glazes for palaces, black tiles for elite scholars, and the occasional celadon sheen for temples trying to impress visiting nobles. And about those temples, you'll get there. Don't worry. A breeze cuts through the courtyard now. It rustles the bamboo. The trees respond with that papery shiver. And then you hear it. A soft creaking overhead. Not ominous, not broken, just the natural sigh of timber beams adjusting under morning sun. You lie down for a moment on the wooden floor of the Daeshong Maru, the open hall, and stare up at the eaves from below. From this angle, you notice something easy to miss. The precision joinery. No nails, no glue. Just wood slotted into wood, held tight by geometry and time. The overhanging tiles protect all this from the elements, like a hat shading a poet's thoughts. It's not just practical, it's symbolic. The roof guards the bones of the home, allowing the family inside to thrive, to argue, to pickle radish, to to fall asleep listening to rain and roosters in harmony. You close your eyes for a beat. When you open them, a butterfly flutters past. Its wings echo the curves above. There's something deeply human about it all. This idea that we figured out how to make something sturdy and protective that still lifts, curves, and breathes. That even in architecture, we longed for grace. Function was never enough. We needed soul. And while the rest of the world may have chased towers or domes or sweeping buttresses, Koreans quietly perfected the art of a humble curve. A roof that doesn't just cover, but cradles. A roof that listens. A roof that waits. The afternoon sun leans lazily across the village now, casting long shadows from the roofs you've come to admire. As you walk beyond the last cluster of homes, the path becomes gravel, then grass, and finally, stone steps, leading you to an older, quieter place. A temple, nestled into the mountainside like a secret whispered centuries ago, and never taken back. You climb slowly, not just because your legs are tired, but because something about this place insists on reverence. Each step brings you closer to another masterpiece of tilework. This time, more solemn, more intricate, more spiritual. Temple roofs in Korea are different. They still use giwa, but the arrangement is stricter, almost ceremonial. And the colors, oh, the colors. You're not imagining things. These ones are glazed, usually green or black, sometimes tinged with the deep blue of a monsoon cloud. If this were a palace, you'd see brighter hues, gold accents, more flash. But here, the tiles hush you. They say slow down, breathe differently. You do. Up close, the giwa glint ever so faintly under a fine coat of mountain mist. Their edges are rounded, but not perfect. You notice tiny nicks, faint chips, the marks of weather and time. Scars, really. And yet, they're still holding steady. Hundreds of years later, still doing the job. You're standing under the roofline of the Daeungjeon, the main Buddha hall, when you spot a face peeking out from the tiles. Not a human face, it's a chimi, a fish-shaped ornament perched at the roof's end. Legend says these fish protect the building from fire because fish live in water and thus symbolically resist flames. You almost want to chuckle. It's delightfully superstitious. A ceramic fish guarding against fire? But when you think about it, well, maybe it worked. This temple still stands. You scan the rest of the roof. More than fish. Some corners curve upward with dragon heads. Others end in lotus buds or heavenly beasts. These aren't random decorations. They're sumaksai, protective symbols baked right into the architecture. Some scholars argue their placement mirrors constellations. Others say they're just feng shui with a flair for the dramatic. Historians still debate whether the designs were meant to ward off evil spirits or simply signal, hey, this place matters. Either way, you get the point. It matters. You step inside the hall briefly, the air suddenly cooler. The scent of incense hugs your clothes. The bell you hear in the distance isn't digital. It's bronze and ancient, with a ring like a dropped coin in a bottomless well. You glance back out at the roof from within the darkened chamber and notice how the light outside dances along its edges, rippling like water. This is by design. See, temple roofs aren't just there to keep out rain. They frame the sky. Their curves echo the shape of clouds. Their slopes mimic the mountain's spine. And standing beneath one, you really feel, like you're in a place made for conversation with something bigger than yourself. Whether that's Buddha, nature, or the quiet you so often ignore back home is entirely up to you. Let's slide in a delightful oddity here. Some temples historically embedded small terracotta figurines beneath the tiles, little hidden guardians with pointy ears or strange eyes, not decorative, not visible. Just there, like a wink from a builder you'll never meet. And you? You're starting to get it. The roof isn't just a roof. It's a message, a mood, a philosophy in clay. You notice a monk now, slowly sweeping the stone path with a broom made of tied reeds. He nods politely. You nod back. His robes are saffron, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Above him, that magnificent roof arcs like the outstretched arm of the divine. You wonder how many times he's looked up and thought, yes, still standing, still beautiful. You glance at your own reflection in the polished brass basin near the temple's water station. A bit flushed from the climb, hair a little wild, but something in your eyes has changed, slowed, maybe, softened. The tiles did that. Or maybe it was the fish. Either way, you leave a coin in the offering box and step back onto the path. Before you descend, you take one last look. The sun is now grazing the edge of the eaves, gilding every curve in amber. The fish-shaped chimney glints. The mountain seems to inhale. Somewhere, a crow calls from the pine trees, echoing across the tiled ridges. And just like that, the moment passes. But the roof? Still there, still watching, still breathing. You follow the narrow path back toward the village. The gentle curve of temple tiles still lingering in your mind, like a melody that refuses to fade. The air is cooler now. You wrap your arms around yourself and glance upward again. Not at the temple this time, but at the everyday rooftops that line the hillside. Modest homes, tucked together like sheep in a pen, each wearing its own humble crown of giwa. And that's when you notice something odd. Not all tiles are the same. Some are darker, heavier. Others are pale, almost chalky. A few shimmer with the faintest glaze. You stop in front of one cottage where the roof tiles alternate, black and gray, like some kind of ancient Morse code. Turns out, this isn't just wear and tear. It's history. Because while today we bundle Korean roof tiles into a single mental file, they actually evolved over time, and each style whispers a different story. The earliest giwa, for instance, weren't even made in Korea. They came across the sea from China during the Three Kingdoms period. Kinda like someone bringing sourdough starter to a new continent, except way heavier and made of clay. Now here's the mainstream historical fact of the night. Korea's Baekje Kingdom, 18 BCE, 660 CE, was one of the first regions to adapt and refine roof tile production in a uniquely Korean way. The Baekje artisans didn't just replicate, they innovated. Their tiles were slimmer, lighter, more elegantly curved, perfect for temples and noble houses alike. But then came the Silla Kingdom, and things got robust. Stronger tiles, heavier ones. Some even had embossed lotus patterns pressed into the sumaksai. Subtle, beautiful, spiritual. And yes, some historians still argue whether these floral motifs were purely aesthetic or had Buddhist connotations tied to temple alignment and enlightenment metaphors. Either way, the tiles became storytellers. You crouch beside a small weathered home now, running your fingers across the lower edge of its roofline. The tiles are jagged, not perfectly aligned. This house has clearly seen better days. But the roof? Still doing its job. You chuckle to yourself. Imagine if your own life had this kind of durability baked into it. And here comes a fringe tidbit for you. In certain regions, old roof tiles were believed to absorb bad luck. That's right. So if a house had a string of misfortunes, sick animals, spoiled grain, neighbors who couldn't stop yelling about goats. It wasn't unheard of to swap out a row of tiles as a form of spiritual reboot. No priest, no ritual. Just fresh clay and hope. You wander toward a more recently restored house now, its tiles newer, shinier. But even here, the builders have preserved the tradition. The eaves still curve just slightly upward. The ojung, those decorative ridges between tile rows, are clean, patterned. They didn't have to do that. But they did, because this isn't just roofing, it's continuity. You glance up and spot a young boy on the porch, whittling a stick. His dog sleeps next to him, belly to the sky, clearly unconcerned with history. The boy looks up. You nod. He nods back. No words, just understanding. Behind him, the roof holds its shape, casting its shade. Back on the path, you pause as a cart rattles by, the wheel squeaking in protest. An old man walks behind it, muttering to himself. His house? Covered in mismatched tiles, some dating back decades, others clearly swapped in from somewhere else. You know this because you're starting to recognize the difference. You, dear listener, are becoming a tile nerd. Welcome. And now for something completely nerdy. During the Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1897, roofs were regulated based on social class. That's right. There were actual laws that said who could use tiles and who had to settle for thatched straw. Want tiled roofing? Better have noble blood or official status. Otherwise, enjoy the hay. But did that stop people from sneaking in a few giwa here and there? Nope. Human beings have always found creative ways around arbitrary systems. A few roof tiles on the kitchen shed, maybe no one notices. Just enough to say, I may not be noble, but my soup pot doesn't leak when it rains. Of course, eventually these restrictions eased, and tiled roofing became more accessible. But even then, the styles remained subtly coded. Temple tiles were often green glazed, government buildings leaned toward black. Private homes? Earthy, unglazed browns and grays, unless you had money to show off, in which case, go ahead and sparkle. You're back near the village square now. A few rooftops are glowing in the last sunlight of the day, their curves catching the orange just so. A rooster crows. Late again. Roosters never did care about timekeeping. You sit for a moment on a stone bench beneath a willow tree and think about how strange it is that these humble shapes of fired earth have outlived kingdoms, emperors, even languages, that they started as mere shelter and became tradition, that every roof you've passed today is part of a lineage so quiet, so humble, most people never notice it. But you do now, because now you're paying attention. You lean back, let your head rest against the tree trunk, and look up at the nearest rooftop. It's not perfect. The line sags slightly in the middle. One tile looks like it's ready to jump ship. A tiny weed grows between two rows. But it's beautiful. You sigh. And for just a second, so is everything. You wake slowly to the sound of soft rain tapping the roof tiles above your head. Not your head, literally, of course. You're just imagining yourself there now, tucked beneath one of those ancient Korean rooftops, the kind with deep overhangs and carefully layered giwa, each one channeling the water like an old friend who knows when to give you space. The rain's rhythm is soothing, and you notice something curious. Not a single drop hits the wooden walls directly. That's not an accident. Korean roof tiles weren't just about decoration or status. They were engineers in their own right, masters of weather management. Tilted just right, sloped just so they kept water off the walls, away from the foundations, and flowing toward a safe and silent escape. No downspouts, no plastic gutters, just the subtle genius of curvature, centuries before anyone held a patent. This is where the old phrase comes to life. Form follows function. Because here's your mainstream historical fact of the night. By the time of the Goryeo dynasty, 918 to 1392, Korean architects had fully standardized the pairing of convex gwa and concave gwa, interlocking them with precision to maximize water runoff and minimize leaks. Their arrangement, tile, cover, worked like the teeth of a dragon, each one fitted to the next in a seamless, self-reinforcing pattern. And yet, it still looked beautiful. Practicality and grace, sipping tea together under the eaves. You watch the water now, as it runs in rivulets down the length of the roof, sometimes gathering in a bead before slipping off the edge. In some rural villages, folks used to place jars beneath these eaves to collect rainwater for washing or even drinking, though that second part's a little sketchy. Let's just say we're all glad for modern filtration. Want a fringe tidbit? Some tiles were deliberately scored on the underside to create a soft whistle when rain hit them, like a ceramic wind chime only the storm could play. Imagine lying under one of those roofs, the air heavy with petrichor. Your only company, the gentle, haunted tune of whispering tiles. And if you're wondering whether this poetic notion was universal, well, historians still argue whether that musical aspect was intentional or just a delightful side effect of natural erosion. Either way, it's just the kind of detail that turns a roof into a memory. You walk now through a lane of houses nestled against the forest edge, roofs darkened by the rain. The streets are slick, but the overhangs are generous, letting you stroll without getting soaked. You stop under one particularly wide eave, the rainwater sluicing down into a row of smooth stones, placed perfectly to absorb the splash. Another bit of quiet design you wouldn't notice unless you were really paying attention. The air smells of wet pine and wood smoke. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere behind you, a wooden door creaks and then thumps shut. You are alone again with the rooftops. And here's something that might surprise you. Even within the same village, no two roofs were exactly the same. Clay mixtures varied, firing methods changed depending on the kiln, and individual tile makers left tiny, almost imperceptible marks. Fingerprints, patterns, even makers' stamps, like potters, but for clouds. You crouch beside a pile of discarded tiles leaning against a low wall. Some are chipped. Others have moss creeping over their surfaces like nature's reclamation crew. One is broken cleanly in two, revealing its cross-section, a slice of time. You run your fingers over the gritty surface, feeling the roughness of sand and ash still embedded in the clay. This wasn't just art. It was labor. Hard, repetitive, patient work. Rain picks up now. You pull your cloak tighter, imaginary though it may be, and follow a footpath toward an old public building, maybe a magistrate's house or a village school. Its roof is layered with green-glazed tiles, rare and expensive. You've seen these before, mostly on temples, and even then, only on the wealthiest. The green comes from copper oxide in the glaze, and firing it properly required near magical timing. Too hot, and it bubbled. Too cold, and it dulled. But when it worked, the result shimmered like jade in the rain. And here's where our inner architectural geek gets a little thrill. certain roofs were actually tiered, not just in height, but in complexity. The upper layer might have ornamental dragon tiles at the ridgeline. The middle rows used standard convex and concave tiles, and along the eaves, special decorative chimien tiles, often sculpted into lotus blossoms, cloud scrolls, or tiny guardian faces meant to ward off evil spirits. Yes, guardian tile faces, staring into the abyss so you didn't have to. That alone makes you pause. You picture a craftsman sculpting one of those faces centuries ago, tongue poking out in concentration, wondering if his roof demon should look more like a lion, or more like a really tired man with a mustache. Fringe fact time. Some end tiles were modeled after actual masks worn in local folk dances. Talcum. The masks were believed to chase away bad luck, so the logic went, why not put one on the roof and really commit? The roof above you now has one such tile. A rounded face, slightly chipped, but still grinning like it knows something you don't. You step out again into the rain, and now the smell has changed. It's richer, earthier. Somewhere someone's cooking. Garlic and radish and something else. Maybe pork belly if you're lucky. Rain always sharpens the appetite. And roofs, you realize, are more than just shelter. They're thresholds. The line between home and storm. Between silence and noise. Between what's held in and what's kept out. You reach a tiny tea house near the river's bend, a low building with broad eaves and an open front. The roof tiles curve like a sigh, and the water drips from their tips into a bamboo gutter. Inside, an old woman ladles tea into a ceramic cup. She doesn't look up, but she nods toward the bench beside her. You sit. She pours. Outside, the rain continues, and the roof listens. The steam from your teacup coils upward, slow and lazy, mingling with the rhythm of raindrops tapping the bamboo gutters. The warmth of the tea grounds you, earthy, nutty, just a hint of ginger. And it reminds you of something that's easy to forget in a world of glass and steel. That a roof isn't just a barrier above your head. It's a culture, built tile by tile. Now that your ears are tuned to the rain's tempo, you start to notice subtle differences between the roofs nearby. The one across the road has a deeper overhang. The one behind the tea house slopes lower, its tiles darker with age and algae. It's like watching a choir sing the same melody, but each voice slightly unique. You stretch your legs and walk again, umbrella-less because, let's be honest, those eaves are working overtime. The next home you pass is quieter, older. The tiles sag ever so slightly in the middle, an age wrinkle, not a flaw, but your eye is drawn to something odd along the ridge, what looks like a small stone animal, crouched and alert. Ah, yes, that would be a Japsang. Mainstream fact. During the Joseon dynasty, these little figurines, usually carved in the form of lions, monks, or mythological beasts, were placed on palace rooftops to ward off evil and protect against fire. Fire was the great destroyer of wooden buildings, and while it's doubtful that ceramic animals had actual firefighting powers, they made people feel safer. And isn't that what half of architecture is about? The origins of Japsang are still debated. Some historians argue they came from Chinese Buddhist temple traditions. Others say they evolved independently, tied to Korean shamanistic beliefs. Still others insist they were introduced by royal decree after a particularly bad palace fire that left nothing standing but the roof tiles, because of course, the tiles survived. You squint up at this particular figurine. It has the body of a lion, but the mischievous face of a raccoon. And it's Smiling? At least one corner of its mouth is turned up like it just told a secret. Fun fringe tidbit. Some roof guardians weren't serious at all. In fact, folklore says a few tile makers would model japsang after local drunks or gossipers as a sort of clay-based public shaming. Oh look, there's old Kwan on the roof again. Must be Thursday. You walk on, the cobbled path leading you toward a different part of the village. Wider roads, grander homes. You're near the old provincial magistrate's quarters now, and the roof here is pristine. Not a tile out of place. The ridgeline is lined with ornate decorations, and even the ends of the eaves curl like waves. You get the feeling the roof knows it's being admired. Underneath that proud curl is a carved dragon's head, open-mouthed, fangs bared. Dragons in Korea aren't the fire-breathing, gold-hoarding types of Western tales. They're water spirits, benevolent, noble, wise. To put one on your roof is to ask the rain to fall gently, the streams to flow steadily, and misfortune to take a hike. You tilt your head back and wonder what conversations these roofs have during storms. Probably a lot of polite murmuring and the occasional humble brag. Another gust of wind carries the scent of pine sap and wet stone. The rain has softened now, just a mist, and for a moment everything feels weightless. You come to a halt beneath a school building, maybe 100 years old at most, but the roof follows the old tradition. It's a good reminder. Even modern Korea kept this ancient language of tiles alive, long after skyscrapers and steel moved in. You trace a finger along the curve of one low tile. It's glazed in that rich brown-black hue, somewhere between molasses and ink, fired hot and fast. The technique is old. Some say it dates back to the Silla period, others to even earlier, during Proto-Korean tribal times. There's no single answer, of course. Historians still argue whether early tile technology came from indigenous experimentation or was influenced by Chinese migration during the Han Dynasty. The truth, probably, is both. Borrowed knowledge, reshaped by new hands. You pass a row of older homes, some abandoned, others still holding on. Their roofs are weather-worn but defiant, like old storytellers who've seen too much to crumble. On one, a bird's nest is tucked between two slightly misaligned tiles. Not a fault, but an invitation. A family of swallows has made their home there. Soft feathers, mud-packed entryway, bits of string fluttering like prayer flags. It's almost comical how natural it looks. High-tech roofing today might brag about integrated wildlife solutions, but this old tile just shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure." There's room. And speaking of integration, look down. At the base of this home is a small depression lined with stone, catching runoff from the roof. These were sometimes used as impromptu gardens, sometimes for washing vegetables, sometimes just for collecting frogs. That's right, frogs. In fact, there's a saying in some provinces that if frogs avoid your roof runoff, your home has bad karma. A quirky superstition? Sure. But also, maybe don't risk it. You stroll further, the village thinning now as it bleeds into rice paddies and pine-dappled hills. A final home perches at the edge, its roof slightly askew from years of snow and sun. The tiles are mostly intact, but here and there, moss blooms between them like a quiet rebellion. And yet, the house feels alive. It's breathing through those tiles, exhaling old warmth, inhaling mountain wind. This is what a roof is supposed to do. Not just protect, but participate. Not a lid on a box, but a living, changing skin over the life within. You stand a moment longer. You press your palm to the lowest tile. Warm. Software. still holding the memory of the last sun. And above you, the raccoon lion is still smiling. You leave the village behind and trace a narrow footbridge over a calm stream, feeling the air shift, cool and mossed with pine breath. On the other side, you find a cluster of abandoned farmhouses, roofs sagging, tiles faded to dusky gray, some broken, others missing entirely. Wild grasses sprout around their foundations, feeding memory more than livestock now. The scene whispers abandonment, but up above, the roof lines still hold posture, a stubborn pride in the face of neglect. There's a mainstream historical fact here. Korean rural homes often use simpler, unglazed clay tiles, nonggiwa, which weren't as durable as temple tiles, but cost far less, making them widespread among common folk by the Joseon period. Yet, even these humble tiles, fired in small village kilns, could last decades if well made. You crouch beside one ruined roof, placing your palm on a tile that feels spongy at the edge, a sign of water infiltration. You nearly wince, like you're touching a bruise. Imagine if your own skin held memories like that. Years drenched, dried, cracked. Still brittle, but still part of you. Fringe fact time. Some rural tile makers would deliberately leave slight horizontal ridges on their tiles so smoke from indoor fires would cling to them, camouflaging soot accumulation on the roof. A primitive self-cleaning hack. Clever? Absolutely. Modern roofs could take notes. And historians still debate whether these practice-driven ridges were aesthetic or purely functional. Did villagers think they were decorating the roof? Or did they just like the way soot darkened them artistically over time? You stand and brush loose debris off the tile, and it falls like ancient breadcrumbs. The hollow beneath exposes tiny shadows. Rooms emptied long ago. Lives moved on. Moving on, you reach a farmhouse with half its roof collapsed. The remaining tiles frame the sky like a broken crown. But what catches your eye? A single tile ridge, brass gilded, glinting among the ruin. Clearly from a temple or noble hall, repurposed here in desperation or thrift. No ceremony, no plan. A bit of opulence in ruin. You imagine the story, a family salvaging, integrating, repurposing, like applying gilded edges to grief. Here's another quirky tidbit. Scavenging temple tiles for homes was not uncommon. Some believed sacred tiles brought protection even outside of temples. Less holy historians say it was just resourceful recycling. Still, scholars still argue whether this practice diluted spiritual meaning or extended its protection to everyday life. Maybe both. You edge past a collapsed wall and view the sky through what once was a roof. Light streams in like benediction. You sigh, thinking that fragility too has a kind of grace. A breeze whispers through the opening, rustling fallen straw hats inside. You spot a vine, green and new, curling across old floorboards. Life persists. Ruins compost into renewal. You cross back over the stream, this time taking the long route along an old earthen road. Dappled sunlight filters through pine overhead. At the road's crest sits a newly constructed shrine, likely built to honor recent lineage, and its roof is spotless. Tiles are deep black, glossy, neatly aligned. End tiles form lotus blossoms at each corner. The roof looks born today. Its juxtaposition. New harmony built atop ancient understanding. A statement that what came before still matters. You step toward it respectfully. The shrine's door is closed, but you see footprints in the earth, fresh offerings stirred inside. And the roof? It gleams with intent. You glance upward, imagining every droplet, every gust of wind. kissing those tiles and falling away, their perfect curves guiding each moment. And you realize a roof, like memory, must be both shelter and signal. It protects what's inside, but it also tells the world who lives there, who they aspire to be. You leave the shrine behind, the roof shimmering like a promise under the midday sun. Ready for whatever the rest of your journey might bring, you head further into the foothills now, following a winding path flanked by low stone walls and dense stands of bamboo. Their hollow bodies click and sway like percussion instruments in a sleepy orchestra. The light has softened. Afternoon golden tones stroke the path like a gentle hush. You're alone, but not lonely. There's a rhythm here, the kind that plays in the silence between footsteps. Ahead lies a structure that doesn't look like much at first. A low-walled courtyard with a squat rectangular building in the middle, half buried in the hillside. But as you approach, the roof reveals itself, layered like a fallen fan, tiles arranged with obsessive precision, gray-glazed clay, some still faintly tinted with sea salt patina, others marked with old kiln fingerprints, tiny permanent echoes of their makers. Fact: Korean burial houses for noble families often featured earth-toned tiled roofs to harmonize with the land. This subtle architecture blurred the line between nature and dwelling, the living and the dead. The roof was both boundary and invitation. And quirky detail: some grave roofs were fitted with intentional gaps between specific tiles, not for rain, but for spirits. Belief said ancestral souls needed doorways to enter during rituals or festivals. So next time you see a roof with a mysterious gap, maybe it's not a flaw, it's a welcome mat. You step through the wooden gate, bowed slightly, and pause in the center. The quiet is thick here, almost ceremonial. Somewhere beneath your feet lies a stone tablet etched with names you can't read. But above your head, the roof stretches, familiar and strong, quietly guarding this liminal space. Historians still argue whether these burial roofs were patterned after Confucian ideals or inherited shamanic customs. Some say the symmetry represents filial duty. Others think the curves mirror old animist metaphors about sky gods and sheltering spirits. You gaze upward, and the roof's silhouette breaks the sky into shapes that feel older than language. A magpie hops along the ridge beam and tilts its head at you, as if curious about your thoughts. You don't have any despair, really. You're too wrapped in the moment. Leaving the grave house, the trail narrows and dips into a shaded grove, where a ruin crumbles under ivy and time. Only the foundation stones remain, and a scattering of tiles, half buried in leaves. You kneel and lift one. It's heavy, moss-flecked, but still intact. You run your finger along its groove. Fringe fact? In certain mountain villages, children used old broken tiles as sleds during winter, riding them down muddy slopes like medieval toboggans. You smile, imagining the chaos. Apparently, it scuffed every pair of shoes and every grandmother's patience. Standing now, you cradle the tile like a memory, then gently lay it back among its siblings. The roof is gone, but the story lingers. Back on the trail, a bend reveals a tiny footbridge over a dry stream bed. On the other side, a lone pagoda, 3 tiers tall, resting on a stone base. It's modest, not flashy, likely once part of a temple complex, now lost. Its roof tiers are staggered like stacked hats. Each is decorated with small, upward-flicked corners, meant to repel both rainwater and evil spirits. Wind chimes hang from the corners, their tones almost too soft to hear over the rustling bamboo. Mainstream fact: Multi-tiered pagoda roofs were often constructed without nails, held together by interlocking brackets and tension alone. This flexibility let them sway and survive earthquakes better than some modern buildings. And that fringe bit? Some ancient builders snuck tiny clay figurines, frogs, turtles, even mischievous children, between tiles for luck. They weren't visible from below, just stowaways hitching a ride on eternity. Historians still debate whether these figurines were religious symbols, worker pranks, or tributes to local folklore. Maybe they were all of those, maybe none. You sit near the base, leaning against the cool stone, gazing upward. The roofline traces the sky in gentle arcs, each curve a conversation between weight and wind. You could fall asleep here. You almost do. But then a crow calls from the trees and reminds you. There's still further to go. The path climbs now, gravel crunching underfoot as you ascend toward the mountain's shoulder. The air is thinner here, touched with the scent of pine needles and faint wood smoke, carried from a distant cooking fire you'll never see. The trees part slowly, like curtain folds, and ahead, you find it. An abandoned temple pavilion, slouched with age but still holding its breath. Its roof, half swallowed by creeping vines, sits with gentle defiance atop weathered columns. You approach like a pilgrim. The tiles are uneven now, some broken, others sunken in like old teeth. But the pattern remains, faintly recognizable, like the melody of a song you haven't heard in years. This is what the scholars call a ghost roof, not because it's haunted, probably, but because it's lost its house. The rest of the structure has either rotted, burned, or been taken by villagers desperate for timber. But the roof, oh, the roof, stayed. They often do. Mainstream fact, Korean roof tiles were engineered to last centuries, even when the structures beneath them gave way. The interlocking design resisted both rain and erosion, making tile roofs the final survivors of many ancient buildings. The breeze sighs through cracked eaves. You step inside, careful not to disturb the floorboards, though at this point, you might be walking on history more than architecture. And here's a strange little tidbit. Roof tiles in certain provinces were believed to trap voices. Yes, actual words. Craftsmen would whisper blessings or curses into hollow end caps before sealing them. The idea was that those whispers would echo through time, protecting the house or warning its enemies. You run your fingers along the edge of one tile now, wondering if anyone's voice is still in there, waiting. Maybe a wish, a prayer, or a scolding. You whisper something yourself, just in case. Nice hat. The roof doesn't answer, but a dragonfly does a lazy circle over your head before darting off, as if delivering your message elsewhere. Historians still argue whether these whispered blessings were common practice or romantic invention. Some point to oral tradition, others to the lack of direct records. But even skeptics admit, if any building part could carry a memory, it would be the roof. You step out again and take a seat on a mossy rock nearby, just close enough to hear the wind tug gently at the remaining shingles. This is what time sounds like. As twilight begins to ink the treetops, the world shifts. Colors bleed into one another, outlines blur, and shadows lean a little longer than they did before. It's here, in this hush, that the genius of these roofs really shows. They're not just functional. They're emotional. Designed to cradle you through sun and storm, to watch the seasons turn, to fall apart gracefully, without complaint. It's weirdly comforting. Down below, barely visible now, another tiled rooftop catches the dying light. Maybe a farmhouse, maybe a tea house. doesn't matter. The silhouette is familiar. That curved spine, the upturned corners, the quiet dignity. You wonder, how many of these have you walked beneath in your life? How many offered shade without asking, shelter without fanfare? Fringe fact: some roof tiles were buried in special ceremonies when replaced, almost like a funeral for inanimate heroes. They were sometimes wrapped in cloth, blessed, and placed into the earth with coins or poems, because even objects, if they've served well enough, earn a resting place. You take one last look at the ghost roof, then bow slightly. Just a nod, a thank you. No roof lasts forever, but some, like this one, last just long enough to be remembered. As you descend back toward the lower paths, the forest thickens behind you, swallowing the ruin with gentle indifference. But you'll carry its outline with you for a while longer, maybe even into your dreams. Just a few more hours of light left now, and a few more rooftops to find. You're walking again, feet aching, but in that good, earned way. When you round a bend and see a cluster of thatched homes hugging a hill, above them rises something different. It's a mansion, or maybe a palace fragment. Once grand, now slumped like a nobleman who's been sitting too long at dinner. And its roof, that roof, is astonishing. Wide and elaborate, each tile like a polished scale, it seems to float above the beams, barely touching, like it's been levitating since the Goryeo dynasty. The edges flick upward more dramatically than any you've seen so far, like a phoenix mid-flight. You approach slowly, cautious not to disturb the silence. It's not abandonment you feel here. It's waiting. Mainstream fact: these high-status roofs often used special glazed tiles called yongmaru, reserved for government buildings or noble estates. Greenish-blue, sometimes black, they shimmered like beetle shells in sunlight and made it instantly clear who was important. The weight of the roof could collapse a lesser home. But here, it perches on pillars carved with lotus blossoms, supported by a web of bracket arms. The gongpo. Each bracket fits like puzzle pieces, distributing the weight so elegantly it feels like the building is wearing a crown. Inside, the house is hollowed out. A single chest, too large to carry and too stubborn to burn, still squats in the corner. You find yourself glancing up more than down, watching the interplay of tile and beam, shadow and dust. And here's your quirky detail. Certain estate roofs included hidden compartments between rafters, sometimes to store valuables, sometimes pets. Yeah, one record mentions a noble's wife hiding her favorite cat in the rafters during a forbidden visit. The cat apparently stayed quiet the whole time. Royal blood, perhaps. Historians still argue whether these high roofs were more symbolic than functional. Some believe they were built tall to impress the heavens, others that they were just flexes. Look how much tile I can afford, kind of thing. But here's a deeper truth. They were also tools of social architecture. In a society shaped by hierarchy, your roof revealed your place long before your voice could. As you wander beneath this aristocratic skeleton, you spot faint pigment, traces of vermilion and turquoise in the underside beams. The roof was once painted, the whole ceiling a work of art no one outside the household would see. Because style, apparently, isn't always for showing off. Sometimes it's just for you. Outside, dusk has turned blue and silver. You sit beneath the eaves, letting your shoulders relax, tilting your face up like the tiles themselves. Fringe fact: in certain mountain regions, people believed that roofs sang at night, wind catching the curves, owls landing on eaves, temperature shifts creating subtle creaks. Some grandmothers swore the house was telling bedtime stories if you just listened right. You close your eyes for a second, trying to hear one. And sure enough, there's a creak, a long, sighing note, and then a soft thud, as though the ghost of that noble woman's cat just leapt between rafters once more. You stay a little longer, because sometimes the quietest houses are the ones still whispering. You rise before the light fades completely, brushing dust from your clothes as you leave the noble estate behind. The road curls downward now, toward a wide river plain where the horizon opens up like a scroll. There's a village up ahead, one of those quiet, workaday places where every structure feels like it grew straight out of the earth. And there, as you walk past the mill house and water wheel, you find something humbler, but no less important. The tile maker's kiln. It squats low to the ground, part oven, part dragon, its soot-blackened mouth forever yawning. The workshop beside it smells of wet clay and pine ash, and the roof tiles stacked outside are still warm from their slow, smoky birth. Mainstream fact, traditional Korean roof tiles, giwa, were made in kilns like this, using a method called yeontan sogak, or reduction firing. This ancient process gave tiles their dense structure and rich earthy tones, from soft reds to deep charcoal blacks. Kilns had to be carefully monitored. Too much oxygen, and the tiles crumbled. Too little, and they warped into useless waves. A middle-aged potter kneels near the fire pit, his tunic soot-streaked, his fingers permanently stained ochre. He doesn't look up as you pass, too busy shaping a fresh tile with the heel of his palm. Each motion is practiced, intimate, a dance between muscle and material. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some potters use their own feet to shape and compress clay for tile batches. Yes, like grapes for wine. They'd stomp the mix to the right consistency while singing rhythm songs, usually something off-key and mildly insulting to their in-laws. You spot shelves stacked with molds, semicircles for the pan tiles, shallow troughs for the ridge caps, even a few animal face stamps for decorative keoma ends. A particular favorite seems to be the grinning boar, supposedly good luck, if a little terrifying when viewed in the fog. Historians still argue whether tile makers were considered artisans or laborers. On paper, they held little social standing, yet their work literally roofed the nation, from village schools to royal pavilions. It was a profession of backbone and breath, of patient craft that rarely earned applause. You lean in to watch the kiln flames for a while. The tiles inside are glowing faintly orange, arranged in rows like sleeping fish. The potter finally looks over and nods once, more to acknowledge the fire than you. Then he reaches for a stick and draws in the ash. A date, a tile count, and a symbol that looks suspiciously like a cabbage. "It's to let the fire know what I want," he says with a shrug. Magic or math, who's to say? The kiln spits smoke, the sky turns velvet, and you move on. Because as vital as the kiln is, it's just the start. Now, you need to see how these tiles make their way into actual roofs, not by magic, but by men climbing ladders. Down the path, you follow a group of workers hauling tiles in baskets balanced on their backs. They move like ants, bent low, steady-footed. Some are apprentices, barely old enough to lift a ridge tile without tipping over. Others are wiry veterans, legs like rope, chewing ginseng roots as they work. One pauses beside you. "You here to watch?" You nod. He gestures with his chin toward the half-built roof ahead. Best part's coming. You walk with him, past stacks of timber and ropes, until the frame of a new roof rises before you, bare bones waiting to be dressed. And this is where it all comes together. You hear the slow clink of tile against tile, the thud of sandals on plank, the creak of pulley ropes stretched taut. It's delicate work. Each giwa must overlap just right, aligned to shed rain, but also breathe with the wind. Roofs in Korea aren't just protection, they're balance, harmony. Feng shui translated into ceramic. Fringe fact: some tile setters had superstitions about who could start the first row. In one region, only left-handed builders were allowed to place the first eave tile, said to bring long life to the house. In another, the tile layers wouldn't speak for the entire first hour, treating the work like a sacred rite. The man beside you wipes sweat from his brow and grins. "Takes 100 tiles just to finish that edge," he says. You'd think the roof was trying to outgrow the house. Maybe it is. The sun's almost gone now, leaving the horizon rimmed in molten gold. You watch one final tile set into place with a muted clack. The roofer leans back and exhales. Done. The roof curves gently, almost smiling in silhouette. And for a second, so do you. The finished roof curves over the home like a resting dragon, its glossy tiles glimmering faintly in the twilight. You step back and admire how the silhouette flows, not jagged or mechanical, but smooth and organic, as if the roof had simply grown out of the earth and arched into place. It isn't just beautiful, it's alive in a quiet, stoic way. You walk along the outer edge of the village, where the rooftops roll like dark waves over the low hills. From here, the full poetry of Giwa emerges. The way each roof sits lightly on its structure, layered like feathers, gently sloped to carry away the rain without protest. You can almost hear them breathing as the night wind curls through the alleyways, each roof humming its own lullaby to the stars. Mainstream fact: traditional Korean roofs are part of a broader architectural philosophy called hanok, where the roof isn't a cap or shield. It's a mediator between house and sky. The weight of the tiles is carefully balanced against the wooden beams below, and every curve is calculated to allow optimal airflow, light, and even seasonal expansion. The result? Cool in the summer, warm in the winter, and absurdly photogenic all year round. As you stroll, a grandmother leans out from a window and tosses a scoop of rice water toward a pot of herbs. The droplets patter against the tiles, bead up, and vanish. None pools, none seeps into the seams. Perfect runoff. Built that roof 50 years ago, she mutters. Still doesn't leak, unlike my knees. You chuckle softly and carry on. And now, your quirky tidbit. In some parts of Korea, it was customary to plant tiny tufts of moss or wildflowers in the crevices between roof tiles, not just for aesthetics, but as a kind of organic weather gauge. If the plants started drooping, rain was likely. If they perked up, the weather would hold. It was like a herbal forecast for those who didn't trust clouds. You notice how different roofs tell different stories. A modest farmhouse has dark, sun-scorched tiles arranged in clean lines. A scholar's house sports elegant, scroll-shaped ridge caps where birds like to nest. And one particular roof near the temple entrance is adorned with ornamental creatures, tiny ceramic dogs and lions crouched like sentinels. Historians still argue whether those roof guardians were spiritual protectors or just decorative bravado. Some say they kept away evil spirits. Others think they were status symbols, showing off a homeowner's wealth and artistry. A few even suggest they served as early insurance policies, visible claims that the house was protected from supernatural lawsuits. You stop beneath a particularly steep gable where 3 such creatures perch like choir boys. Their expressions range from noble to mildly confused. One has a chipped ear. Another seems to have been painted with faint gold, now faded by decades of sun. The door below opens with a creak, and an old man steps out holding a clay lantern. He doesn't say anything, just gives you a look that says, "Yes, it's mine." And yes, it's still standing. You nod in return. He nods back. In the silence, you both glance up at the roof once more. You think of all the forces pressing down on that curve, wind, snow, years, and how it has borne them all without complaint. How these ancient tiles are more than construction. They are memory, frozen mid-fall, the way a tree leans over a favorite path, or how a mother tilts her head just so when listening. There's grace here, discipline, a quiet genius, and tonight you're finally starting to understand it. You continue walking, passing under eaves that whisper with rustling leaves and creaking beams. Here and there, you see light flickering behind rice paper windows. Someone's cooking stew. Someone's writing a letter. Someone's falling asleep to the gentle drumbeat of nighttime crickets. It occurs to you, every person beneath these tiles lives a different life, but they're all held by the same humble geometry. A roof designed centuries ago, still doing its job, one curved tile at a time. You pause once more before heading downhill. There's a child's shoe left upside down beside a step. Rainwater has pooled inside. You reach down, pour it out, and set the shoe upright under the overhang, safe and dry. The roof above you curves overhead, shielding without boasting. Silent. Steady. There's a kind of wisdom in that, isn't there? You pass beneath another overhang where the scent of old wood mixes with blooming magnolia. The lane narrows. The roofs above you nearly touch. You could reach out with both hands and graze the eaves of 2 separate homes. You do. They feel warm from holding the day's last sun, rough with age, smooth in patches worn by time and wind. These roofs, you realize, aren't just above people. They are with them. They catch their laughter in summer, muffle their arguments in winter, watch over infants born in spring and hold the quiet weight of morning in fall. They are not background. They are not passive. They are participants in the life of a village. Mainstream fact: in traditional Korean villages, roof lines often reflected not just aesthetic style, but social hierarchy. The noble classes had grander curves, more ornate ridge tiles, even painted under eaves in green, blue, and red. Commoners kept to simpler lines, dark gray clay, and functional designs. But whether palace or cottage, all roofs shared that same gentle slope, humble but intentional. A rooster crows far too early, or maybe too late. You can't tell anymore. The sky is bruising into indigo, and the stars blink into view one by one, like a shy audience deciding to stay for the show. You sit down on a low stone wall near a black-tiled pavilion. From here, the rooftops look like scales, layered, overlapping, defensive. They shimmer ever so slightly, catching candlelight and moonlight alike. Here comes your quirky tidbit. Some Korean roof tiles were stamped with poetic inscriptions or tiny symbolic motifs on the underside, hidden from view. These might include lotus flowers, Buddhist mantras, or the names of artisans and their lovers. Imagine making art meant never to be seen, except by the sky. You lie back on the wall and imagine 100 generations of craftspeople doing just that, leaving messages the world will never read. Or maybe the messages weren't for the world at all. Maybe they were for the clay, the fire, the spirit of the roof itself. Historians still argue whether those hidden markings were acts of devotion, superstition, or quiet rebellion. Some say they were blessings for the house. Others insist they were personal graffiti in a world that rarely allowed self-expression. Still others believe the markings were proof of training, like a potter's secret signature. Whatever the reason, it makes you smile. You look up at the underside of an overhang above you. Of course, you can't see the inscribed side of the tile from here, but you imagine it anyway. Some tiny line of poetry curled beneath that ceramic shell, unseen for 600 years. It reads maybe, "This roof saw the moon first." A boy walks by with a bucket sloshing against his leg. He's humming a song you don't know. His hair's damp. His tunic is saffron-colored and patched at the sleeve. He pauses beside you and asks, "You waiting for rain?" You shake your head. He shrugs. Roof's good either way. Then he wanders off. There's wisdom in that too. The bell at the village edge rings once, deep and slow. Just a reminder, it's getting late. Not a warning, just a nudge. You take one last walk past a home where tile and vine live in harmony. Ivy creeps across the roof's edge, not intrusive, just coexisting. The homeowner has let it stay, and it works. Nature curling into architecture, not against it. It occurs to you that Giwa isn't really about tiles. It's about humility, about working with forces larger than yourself. Weather, time, gravity, and learning to cooperate rather than resist. About repetition, grace, letting form follow feeling. You pass by a side wall where a few extra roof tiles are stacked neatly in a pile, just in case. Not discarded, just resting, waiting for their turn again. That's the kind of town this is. A door creaks open. Someone sets a lantern outside and then shuts the door again. You're not sure why, but you feel honored by that, as if the roof itself has recognized your gaze, acknowledged it, and offered you its light. You bow your head slightly, the way you would to an elder, because by now you know that curve of clay above your head is older than your questions, softer than your doubts, smarter than you think. It doesn't demand your awe, it earns it. You wake up to the softest of sounds, a single drop of rain tapping on a clay tile above you, then another, and another, like fingers drumming thoughtfully on a ceramic drum. The sky has darkened into a charcoal wash. The lanterns are out, and above your head, the ancient roof tiles, Giwa, are doing what they've done for centuries, keeping the rain from you. It's not a downpour, just the kind of drizzle that makes everything smell like old earth and stories. You stay where you are, letting your body rest against the low wall, the stones warmed earlier by the sun, now cooling under the evening sky. The air tastes clean, almost sweet. A puff of wind passes through, brushing your cheek like a gentle reminder that time's still moving. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime made of hollow bamboo gives a lazy clack. Mainstream fact, traditional Hanok houses were aligned according to the principles of Pungsu Jiri, Korea's form of geomancy. This practice considered mountain shapes, water flow, and energy lines when choosing where to place a structure, especially the roof. It wasn't just superstition, it was deeply environmental. The right direction could mean better airflow in summer, warmth in winter, and the least rain on the least vulnerable wall. It worked. You're proof of that, lying here dry as a scroll in a library. The sky grumbles softly, like a giant clearing its throat. A few more drops fall, then retreat. The roof has done its job, again. You peer up at the gentle curve of the tiles, glossy now in the rainlight. They gleam faintly, not like metal, but like something quietly alive, not in a mystical way, just in the way that good craftsmanship hums when it's content. Quirky tidbit. Some of the oldest giwa tiles excavated in Korea had thumbprints still visible in the clay. Not decorative, just there, left behind in the making, like a whisper of the human who pressed them. Imagine holding a tile and feeling a dimple from 900 years ago, a little fossil of intent. Historians still argue whether those prints were accidental or intentional marks of pride. Maybe both, maybe neither. But it feels right, doesn't it? That something built to endure would also carry something so small, so fleeting. You wonder what your own fingerprints leave behind, not just on clay or keyboards, but on the quiet corners of a room, or the people who pass through your life like weather. Maybe it's not about leaving a mark. Maybe it's about making space. A moth flutters near the overhang, drawn by the last light from inside a home. You hear someone singing. A woman, maybe. Her voice is soft, barely louder than the rain. It's not a lullaby exactly, more like a chant or a memory. The words drift upward, bounce off the tiles, and scatter into the night like petals. You close your eyes. Now the curve of the roof above you is no longer just architecture. It's a cradle. It's a memory palace. It's a history book written in silence, shadows, and soot. You remember a story, told to you long ago, of a monk who spent 20 years carving a prayer into the underside of a single roof tile, stroke by stroke, with a thorn. When the tile broke during installation, he wept. Not because it shattered, but because no one else would ever read the words he'd placed there. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the point wasn't to be read. Maybe the point was to do it anyway. You run your hand along the low wall beneath you. It's rough, real, cool with rain. You press your palm flat, as if trying to absorb the patience baked into this village. All around you, the houses breathe gently beneath their tiled shells. Their roofs curve in gentle arcs, part shelter, part sculpture. There is no urgency, no pride, just presence. It's not flashy. It's not viral. It's not begging to be noticed. It just is. You open your eyes. The rain has stopped. The air is still, and the bell in the distant tower gives one final hushed chime. Not a call, not a demand, just a good night. You smile, then slowly, softly, you begin to fall asleep. The rain is gone now. The sky is clear, and the night has folded itself gently over the rooftops like a soft wool blanket. In the silence, the shapes of the homes blur into the hillside. Tile and earth and sky blend together until there's no telling where one ends and the other begins. Just curve after curve, rising and falling like breath. Somewhere a door creaks open, then closes again. A final candle is blown out. And then, nothing. The world holds still. It's in this stillness that the real wisdom of the Giwa becomes clear, not in how well they hold off storms or how elegantly they age, but in how quietly they endure, never asking to be remembered, never needing to shine, just carrying the weight of days and nights and the in-between moments where life happens softly. You stay lying there, your body slack, your breathing slow. Maybe your eyes are still open. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. You've learned something tonight. Something not shouted or scrawled in bold. Something whispered, curved, and baked slowly into the clay. It's this. The quietest things often last the longest. A thumbprint on a tile, a song in the rain, a roof that keeps its promise even when no one is watching. And now, it's your turn to rest beneath that curve. Let it hold you. Let the night settle around you. Let your own thoughts soften and spread out like shadows over stone. The bells won't ring again for hours. You have time. Breathe deep, sink low, sleep well.